Alright, good video. Thanks for watching. Well, hello there folks, this is Lige and welcome to a video for Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. So this video is one that I would have liked to get out much earlier. Specifically, I had put most of my plans for it together shortly after the release of the 5th Sunbreak title update, but now we are here, some amount of time past the final Sunbreak update. That being said, I still have some fun ideas to share with you, and even as people begin to move on from Sunbreak now that it is content complete, I'm sure there are those who are still enjoying their time with the game, myself included. In that case, I hope there are some who will still find some value in this video, which will be another one of my guides on unique and interesting ways to play the game. So in that case, let's jump right into things. This video will be all about the Great Sword. I do also want to throw in a disclaimer that most of the content covered here will apply only to the Sunbreak expansion for Rise, and even within Sunbreak, a lot of what makes this build possible will only be available in the endgame. I know a few folks have expressed disappointment that many of my recent playstyle guides have been heavily gated behind the endgame content, but that is unfortunately just where the most unique build options come into play, so I figured I should at least let you know about this now. My general thought process behind these guides is that they can provide a change of pace for people who have already played through the story with one weapon and are looking to make things more interesting when things get more grindy. But now let's talk about the Great Sword. The original motivation behind this video was a change that came with the 5th Sunbreak title update. Within the patch notes, we were able to see that there were a handful of balance changes done to the various weapon types, so let's take a look at what this means for the Great Sword. The first line we can read here states, increase the power and elemental correction value for the Great Sword's Falling Slash, Vortex Slash, and Rising Slash in the Surge Slash combo. Let me translate that. Made the Surge Slash combo stronger. So at this point, I really don't need to know anymore. I didn't bother to figure out exactly how much stronger they made it because as it turns out, I was already learning how to play the Great Sword with the Surge Slash combo. While I certainly didn't feel like I was playing the most optimally, I was actually having a lot of fun playing the Great Sword in a way that feels unlike how the weapon has ever been played before. And so this buff can be almost nothing, but the fact that I was already having fun with the move and that it is only better now was enough that I decided it is time to put together a full playstyle guide built around the Surge Slash combo. With that, I will now introduce to you the Unstoppable Great Sword. Okay, so listen, I promise I'm not going for a theme here when naming these playstyles, given that this is the third guide I've made in a row using an unword in the name. I do legitimately think I've chosen the perfect name for this playstyle because no matter what attacks come our way, we will just keep on going. So as usual, to start one of these guides, I will cover all of the switch skills that I will be using for this playstyle. You may be familiar with how some of these work, but as always, I like to cover them all just so someone could come into this video having not played the weapon and end up understanding exactly how the playstyle works. Let's start with what is definitely our core skill, the Surge Slash combo. So this skill is new in the Sunbreak update, and it might be one of the most drastic changes the weapon has ever received in the whole series. The reason for this being that the Surge Slash removes our ability to charge. Okay, that's a lie actually, but allow me to demonstrate. With our weapon drawn, let's hold down the top face button. Compared to when we have the Charge Slash combo equipped, we swing our sword immediately. Look at that swing though, even compared to an uncharged swing, it is a little faster and more fluid looking. This is because the Surge Slash combo is in fact meant to be a combo. After our first swing, let's press the top face button 2 more times. This gives us a second swing, followed by a pretty hefty third swing. And so we have our complete combo. No charging, just swinging. Within the Surge Slash combo, these 3 hits are known as Falling Slashes 1, 2, and 3 respectively. But we are just getting started, we have more inputs we can do. Let's try out the right face button. With the Charge Slash combo, this gives us a slow wide sweep that I'm pretty sure no one ever uses, but with the Surge Slash combo, we do a much quicker spin slash. And as you guessed, we can keep going, so let's press the right face button 2 more times after the first. These hits are known as our vortex slashes. Now compared to the straightforward falling slashes, the vortex slashes have a few interesting properties. Let's take a look at the second hit, Vortex Slash 2. This move hits twice, but we can also see that the second hit does some KO damage. This KO damage is actually unique to Vortex Slash 2, no other hits in the Surge Slash can do it. Probably not too useful overall, but interesting nonetheless. Now the real important property comes with the third spinning hit, Vortex Slash 3. During the duration of Vortex Slash 3, we will gain Hyper Armor. This means that as long as we are in the animation for this move, we will shrug off any attacks that hit us, assuming we don't die in the process. We will want to take note of this as being able to absorb hits is pivotal to the core theme of this playstyle. But moving on for now, there is one more input we can perform with the Surge Slash combo. With the old Charge Slash combo, the combined input of the top and right face buttons has seen us perform this extremely slow upward slash that's really only good for annoying your teammates. But once again with the Surge Slash combo, we get a much fancier spin on the move, now seeing us scrape the greatsword across the ground before doing a running upward slash. And if we perform the same input 2 more times once again, we get 2 more hits, with the second one using our forward momentum to continue the combo, and the final one being this crazy ground stab that we use to build up power before doing a huge forward thrust. These 3 attacks make up our rising slashes, and the main theme of these is forward motion. The first attack, Rising Slash 1, gives us the most motion since it includes the running animation. Rising Slash 2 doesn't take us as far forward as we don't do any extra running for this one. For the final Rising Slash 3, while we don't necessarily move any more forward, the forward reach of this hit is quite huge, so even if you feel like you are slightly out of range, your sword may actually end up reaching its destination just fine. Now, we need to put everything we've learned together. You see, each of these 3 inputs have allowed us to perform a 3-hit combo. Well, the thing is, our 3-hit combo can actually be a combination of any of these 3 inputs. For example, we can press the top face button for falling slash 1, then if we press the right face button we will combo into Vortex Slash 2, and we can finish with both buttons for Rising Slash 3. So as you probably noticed, we will always get an attack corresponding with the number of the hit we are on in the combo. And these numbers are important because of the different properties of each numbered move. Remember the finisher of the right face button combo, Vortex Slash 3? This was the only move that gave us Hyper Armor. Therefore, if we ever wanted to get some of that Hyper Armor, we will need to make sure that the third hit of the Surge Slash combo is a Vortex Slash. So as you can imagine, this gives us the ability to fine-tune our combo to our current situation. Perhaps we start with some quick hits using the falling slashes, and then if we find we are a bit too far from our target, we could throw out a rising slash to get a bit more reach. And here's a neat little trick that I've learned about rather recently. If we find ourselves angled the wrong way while slashing, we can't really adjust our aim without ending the combo. Or so I thought. It turns out that the Vortex Slash provides us with a window where we can heavily adjust the angle of our attack. To do this, simply hold the stick in the direction you want to angle yourself towards while the Vortex Slash is happening, and you should find your follow-up hitting right where you want it. This is useful for helping make sure we are positioned properly for landing our bigger follow-ups once the Surge Slash has ended. Now you might be asking, oh wait a minute, what do you mean by once Surge Slash has ended? Are we just not using it all the time now? So remember the lie I told about Surge Slash removing the ability to charge? Well, now's the time that we can no longer pretend to believe it. Once we have completed a 3-hit Surge Slash combo, if we input the top face button plus a direction, we will start to charge a strong charge slash. And as it turns out, we are now back to business as usual greatsword mode. From this point forward, we will have access to the rest of the greatsword's moveset until we end our combo. So really, all we ended up losing was the first charge attack of the combo. The really big and powerful hits are still there, we just gotta work a little harder to get to them. But as a parting gift to us, in exchange for our efforts, the strong charge slash following the surge slash combo will charge much faster. Neat. Before we move on completely from the Surge Slash, however, there is one more thing to cover concerning this transition to the Strong Charge. So far, I have been comboing into the Strong Charge after a Falling Slash 3, which doesn't look really fluid, as we have to pick the sword off the ground before assuming the charge stance. But what if our sword was already off the ground, like after Rising Slash 3? Let's try that. Okay, now that was a way smoother transition. And if we try Vortex Slash 3, it appears the transition speed is somewhere in the middle between the rising and falling slashes. So this is yet another thing to consider with your attack selection during the Surge Slash. If you are preparing to do some charge attacks after the Surge Slash combo, you may want to select a finisher that gets you to them quicker. Okay, and I think we might be done with the Surge Slash mechanics, well, at least before the other skills come into play. I think the one thing I didn't really go over was the DPS values for each combo hit, but honestly, I think what's more important is choosing the right attack to land your hit over always going with the attacks that have the most DPS on paper. Also, I'm lazy and didn't want to figure that out. So now to go over the other switch skills on my list. I gotta say, as far as my playstyles go, this is probably the one where I've felt every single skill has had an important part to play in it, so I want to make sure I'm covering each of these properly. Up next we have the Guard Tackle. This skill is one that if you really wanted to, you could swap for its counterpart, but I have it in the list for a specific reason. So there are two ways to execute this skill. The first one is to press the right face button while charging. Well, since we're using the Surge Slash, we're gonna have to wait until we've finished our combo before we can do this at all. The other way to do this is by pressing the top face button after a roll. Wait a minute, no, that just does another Surge Slash hit. As it turns out, this method of executing a tackle is only doable with the Charge Slash combo, so we are just left with it being possible during our strong or true charged attacks. I still think there's some merit in this move, however, as if we need to buy some more time or absorb a hit while charging, we can still throw out the tackle to do so. Now, why might we be using the Guard Tackle over the regular one then? Both of them absorb hits, just one is a block while the other is Hyper Armor. Well, the reason I have chosen the block over the Hyper Armor is due to my build. I'll get to the build later, but as a preview, I will be running the Offensive Guard Armor skill, which gives a powerful damage boost when blocking an attack at the last second. And so this gives us just another way to block attacks, which means more chances at that damage boost. So moving on to our next skill, we have the Rage Slash, and this one might be almost as important to us as the Surge Slash. The Rage Slash is a move that fills the slot for our highest level charge attack, replacing the True Charge Slash. Now you might be aware that for the Greatsword, the True Charge Slash is the strongest possible attack we can perform with the weapon. You might also be aware that landing a True Charge Slash is not that easy. Sure, I guess you could be good at the game and land them, but we like to have fun here. So enter the Rage Slash. The Rage Slash has two important mechanics. First, while we are charging it, we gain Hyper Armor, so there's nothing that can stop us during this time. In fact, if something does hit us, the move becomes even stronger as a bonus. Oh yeah, I just remembered something. You know those patch notes that I brought up to show off the buff to the Surge Slash earlier? Turns out the devs have given the Rage Slash a little treat too. Apparently when charging the Rage Slash, we will take even less damage when something hits us. I feel like I have in fact noticed this, as I've been able to tank some otherwise scary attacks with this move without having to feel too concerned for my HP. Now the second mechanic of the Rage Slash is that we can aim the move in any direction we want. Even if our target is directly behind us, simply point the stick and release the charge and we can do a 180 and hit right where we want. These two factors combined means that landing the attack is far easier. After all, the strongest attack means nothing if it can't hit. Overall, for the theme of this playstyle, which should be becoming increasingly clear, the unwavering stand your ground vibes the Rage Slash gives us definitely feels like a great fit for what we are going for. Alright, so we are now into our Silkbind moves, and next on the list we have Power Sheath. And this one is pretty straightforward. When we input it with the left trigger and the right face button, we will perform a small wire dash forward before sheathing the greatsword. This of course powers us up, giving us a pretty decent attack boost. We can see that one of our hands will be glowing with silk, which lets us know that the buff is active. It only lasts a short time, however, so this move is generally best done right before we plan on doing some large attacks. In addition, I also like to use this move as a combo canceller. Since we will often find ourselves in long ending lag animations after attacks such as the Rage Slash, we will often want to cancel out of these. Normally we can do this with an evade, but the Power Sheath can fit the same purpose as it gives us a bit of movement and then we can renew our buff in the process. The one downside to this is the wire bug usage, and I'm a little torn on using this too often because we have another Silkbind move that will hunger for our wire bugs far more. That Silkbind is our final switch skill, Strongarm Stance. This skill goes in the slot for the input of the left trigger plus the top face button, and simply put, it is a counter for the greatsword. What makes this move unique from other Silkbinds, however, is that there are two different ways to input it. The first way is of course the normal button combination, which sees us assume our counter stance. Upon taking an attack, we will block the hit and be able to perform a strong counter attack. Now since we are using the Surge Slash combo, we have three options for this counter attack. If we press any of our three Surge Slash inputs, then after blocking the hit, our counter will automatically become the third hit in our combo, so that will either be Falling Slash 3, Vortex Slash 3, or Rising Slash 3. Personally, I am a big fan of following up with the Vortex Slash because of the Hyper Armor, and this means we can easily counter multi-hit combos as the Vortex Slash will let us power through any follow-ups. Now there is however one other way to perform this counter, and many would consider this to be the more valuable use case. And this counter has the unique ability to be performed during a charge attack. The way to input this is interesting. The default input, as we know, is the left trigger plus the top face button. However, while we are charging, we would already be holding down the top face button. But if we just press the left trigger during this time, nothing happens. Instead, to activate the counter, we want to hold the left trigger and then release it. And this method felt a bit weird to me at first, but it does end up feeling pretty natural once you get used to it. Now it turns out that if we succeed with a counter whilst charging, we get a much bigger payoff. Instead of just giving us a Surge Slash hit, we are granted an instant fully charged maximum level attack, which is Rage Slash in our case. Now unfortunately, this isn't as huge for us as it would be for someone running the Charge Slash combo. In that case, you could go from your first charge attack and counter right into the strongest charge, but for us, we can't even start charging until the strong charge, and by then, we are just one step away from the Rage Slash anyways. Even still, the counter is still pretty useful for us, as it's another way for us to firm attacks and stay on the offensive. And there is one more reason I have chosen this skill. Interestingly, the Strongarm Stance is considered a guard, and thus it is affected by some armor skills that affect your guards. And this includes Guard Up, which lets the move handle unblockable attacks, and more importantly, Offensive Guard, which we once again will be running. Therefore, I will try to make heavy use of this move because it will let us take attacks and counter with some extra powered up follow-ups. Okay, that should about cover everything I wanted to for our switch skills and general techniques. I think this video is going to be on the long side, but we have some important stuff to cover for our actual build now, so I hope you'll bear with me. So to introduce the build, I do kinda first need to summarize how exactly our playstyle will play. As we saw with our switch skills, we have a lot of abilities that will either block attacks or let us withstand hits, lending to a playstyle that lets us stay right up by a monster in an almost reckless, death-defying manner. Now with the expectation that we will be in a lot of danger, we should make sure our build is equipped to handle taking lots of damage. Therefore, let's see what kinds of defensive and healing skills I have added to my build to account for this. There really aren't any. So, as it turns out, this build, currently as I am showing it, comes with a slight catch. This build will only play to its fullest potential if I am fighting against afflicted monsters. Now, why would that be? Well, if you have any familiarity with the Sunbreak endgame, then you will know that one of the main features of the afflicted fights is that taking attacks from afflicted monsters will inflict us with the Blood Blight status. And the Blood Blight status is actually amazing for us. because when we're affected by it, any damage we deal heals us in return, which means if we are bold enough to take damage in order to deal damage, we will often come out even on our HP, truly enabling a lot of this playstyle's functionality. And I do feel that it is with afflicted fights that this playstyle is the most fun to use, so if you want to do a bunch of the endgame grinding, you might get some great value out of it. But I know what you're thinking, what if we wanted to fight any non-afflicted monsters, especially when a large amount of the endgame also includes risen elder dragons? Well, don't worry, I will later provide a build with some more survivability for anything that won't bloodblight us. Let me first cover my default build, however. My greatsword of choice is the Diablos greatsword. The thought process behind this choice is that out of all greatswords, this is the one with the highest raw damage, and it is capable of also obtaining purple sharpness. I have also then augmented it as much as I can with my current progression, and just missing one final slot to unlock, and I have given it all the possible attack augments. And this is with the goal of getting my raw damage number as high as possible, because a high base number means that percentage-based attack bonuses will become even stronger. Whether this is the optimal solution to getting the most damage out of the weapon, I don't know, but big number seems cool. Knowing all this now, let's see the armor. I will go ahead and scroll through the pieces I have chosen for the build, plus their decorations and augments. Honestly, it was really hard to choose some pieces over others for this build because many of the endgame armor pieces have so much value on them that it's hard to know exactly which ones are optimal for what I want. So while I'm sure some of you may appreciate seeing the exact loadout I'm using, I do encourage you to pay attention to my chosen skills and see if you can arrive at them more efficiently. And so speaking of my chosen skills, let's go over them. Attack boost is obviously a priority here because at level 7 it scales our damage up 10%, which is pretty good. I'm also a fan of the agitator skill as it's free stats for a large portion of afflicted fights. Handicraft is necessary to get us to purple sharpness, although once your sword is maxed on augment slots, you won't need quite as much. And we have everyone's favorite weakness exploit because we need to offset the Diablos sword's bad affinity. Now this one's important for defining the playstyle, Offensive Guard. Since we mentioned loving percentage-based attack boosts, this one gives us a whopping 15% at level 3. The only catch is activating it, but we did already cover the tools we have that can do so in the Switch Skills Showcase. Now this next one is extremely important, level 3 stun resistance. We can get this skill in a build pretty cheap, but usually I skip it because I simply tell myself that if I play well, I won't need it. In this particular case, however, stun resistance is mandatory. And this is because even if we are capable of taking hits with hyper armor, our stun threshold is not. And so, powering through a quick string of attacks is a surefire method to get us stunned instantly. So just put this in and we won't have to think about that possibility anymore. Another standout skill that fits very well in our build while only costing a small decoration slot is Intrepid Heart. If you are familiar, this skill gives us 1 attack's worth of hyper armor after we've charged it via attacking. What's really good about this is that it will only trigger if an attack would have knocked us away to begin with, so it won't consume itself if we use any of our other hyper armor methods first, giving us just one more way to stay on the offensive. And of course, I still have a ton of miscellaneous skills due to my various armor pieces, so let's just go over the ones that I think are worth having. I will always add Evade Extender level 3 to any build because it makes moving so much better. To manage the little bit of purple sharpness we have, I ended up with 2 points in both Razor Sharp and Protective Polish, and then Speed Sharpening to keep ourselves topped up. Since our playstyle can be Wirebug hungry at times, I opted for some Wirebug Whisperer, and my particular armor choices have also given me a point of Wind Mantle and Frenzied Bloodlust, which both help us out on that front too. And that should cover my base build. I do really think I'm dragging on time here, but I did still want to share a build that would not rely on Blood Blight, so I'll try to speed through this one. I'm gonna scroll through the armor pieces quickly for this one, so feel free to pause the video if you want the full details. Now, concept-wise, to make up for a lack of Blood Blight, I'm going to be including the armor skill Blood Right. And this skill will essentially heal us any time we attack a monster part that has been broken, and definitely a we have Blood Blight at home kind of deal. Since we must rely on broken parts, I have also included some levels of part breaker to help us out. Still, there are some monsters, especially a few of the risen elder dragons, that have frustratingly difficult parts to break, meaning it can still be hard to reliably get healing from this method. And we may just have to accept that some monsters will be a bad matchup for us. But we still have a few more things to add. With level 3 Kushala Blessing, we gain the ability to regen our health above our red gauge, kinda like the Valhazak set bonus from World. In addition, we have Recovery up level 3, which should increase both our natural regen and our blood rate regen. Outside of our armor, however, a very good source of regen can be found at the Dongo shop. If we eat for the skill Super Recovery Dongo using the skewers to get it to level 4, we are given another source of passive regen. Finally, we can eat the item Gourmet Fish on a quest to get even more regen. With all of these combined, our natural regen becomes quite powerful, although we may still need to play a bit more carefully if we don't have any broken parts to heal off of. With this particular setup, I have managed to take on some powerful risen elder dragons, but overall I do think the playstyle shines the most against afflicteds. So finally then, it is time to show off this playstyle in practice. If you haven't quite gotten the picture as to how exactly we're going to play this, these clips should hopefully be a good demonstration, because let me tell you, when this playstyle works, it really works. First up, I will show off my original build against a few afflicted monsters, and then we will end with my modified build played against a risen elder dragon. Okay, with that, let's get started. Alrighty, first hunt time, we are starting with a rather bold choice, a Furious Rajang. While this might seem like a bit of a scary matchup for such a slow weapon, I found the opposite to be true. At least personally, I have a good read on Rajang's attacks, and with the Bloodblade regen, it's pretty easy to survive in a slugfest. There are a few things I gotta watch out for, however. Many of Furious Rajang's hits come with a second lightning attack, so if I'm not careful, my HP can run out pretty fast. Other than those, however, his punches I generally feel okay powering through because those are likely to give us that Bloodblade. One of the more annoying things about this fight, however, is when Rajang gets enraged, as most of our attacks will still bounce off of his arms. In that case, I try to do more straight-on attacks to make sure we hit his head and not the arms. Now this footage is a bit on the old side, so in comparison to some of my more recently recorded stuff, I hadn't quite refined all of my techniques, but there is one important reason that this hunt made the cut. Overall, this is a very fun fight for this playstyle. With heavy use of hyper armor from the likes of the Vortex Slash and the Rage Slash, we should have no problem taking punches and hitting right back. Now moving on, we have another afflicted monster, but one that I would consider to be a tougher matchup, Scorned Magnamalo. Aside from just being a terrifying monster to fight, this is one that happens to be a bit stingier with giving us blood blights. Instead, many of Magnamalo's attacks will inflict us with Hellfire Blight, which is counterproductive to staying alive. A key to our survival in this fight will be knowing when we can afford to take hits and when we should back out. And if we do find ourselves with Hellfire Blight, removing it should be our first priority. Thankfully, we have just the thing we need to do so. That's right, Power Sheath, along with many other Silkbinds that involve a Wire Dash, will instantly purge our Hellfire Blight. Funnily enough, as someone who forgets to use Power Sheath more often, this in a way served as training for me to put it to more regular use. I do have to admit that this hunt I am showing took quite a few takes to record. However, this is not necessarily because I was unable to defeat the monster, but because I felt I wasn't getting a lot of good footage of applying the different techniques that I covered in this video. Hopefully the clips I'm showing should give you a nice mix of the different things that are possible with this playstyle. A few moments that I'm particularly proud of in this hunt included some essentially frame-perfect counters with Strongarm Stance. I managed to get plenty of clean, well-timed counters that let me take advantage of offensive guard to good effect, but purely from a style perspective, just look how crazy this one was. And you're not ready for this one. I mean, I wasn't even ready for it. Going in slow motion, I think that is in fact actually frame perfect. We go from our attack animation to instantly redirecting that tail stab in a single fluid motion. Now that is awesome. I do think I'm happy that I put in a lot of takes for this footage because so many of these clips are just super cool looking. This fact does, however, put a big asterisk next to this gameplay. If this is your first time trying this playstyle, you probably won't be getting results like these right away. Even in this footage, you can still see me playing cautiously at times, throwing out a few quick hits before dodging, even if I could have attempted to take some attacks. Despite me calling this playstyle quote-unquote unstoppable, we still need to use our heads when deciding if an attack is actually worth taking, so I guess the moral of the story is don't always trust the marketing. Wait, no, I can't be saying that. Anyways, since we are definitely going long on time by now, let's move on to our final monster. So, speaking of monsters that are a bad matchup for us, here's Risen Crimson Glow Valstrax. There are two big issues for us to deal with in this fight. The first is that this monster is risen and not afflicted, so we cannot use Blood Blight to heal the damage we take. The second is that this is Risen Crimson Glow Valstrax. To give us as much of a fighting chance as possible, I am running my modified build that provides some extra regen options. However, our first hurdle will be to break apart on the Valstrax in order to enable Blood Right. Thankfully, out of all the Risen Elders, Valstrax at least has a head that will break with little efforts. Us surviving to that point, on the other hand, is another matter. One factor that makes this such a hard matchup is the fact that Valstrax will leave these delayed explosions after many of his attacks. And while we may be able to power through an attack here and there, Valstrax already hits us so hard normally, and just taking more hits on top of these can easily be lethal. So during these first few minutes of the fight, I definitely had to heal for my life more than a few times. Oh, by the way, in this fight, I have learned of an anti-synergy in my build. You see, I am running the Bloodlust skill, mostly as a byproduct of the very high value Risen Shigaru Magala armor. And normally, I like Bloodlust, as it can give me a nice damage boost and combo with Frenzy Bloodlust for the extra bugs. But you know all the natural regen we were supposed to have? Well, anytime the Frenzy virus is on us, basically all that is cancelled out. So at least a few times in this hunt, I had to back off and heal manually because I hadn't yet cured my Frenzy and thus couldn't rely on my regen to keep my health stable. In the end, I decided to just deal with it, but if you would like to have a more survivable experience, I would recommend reworking the build to remove the Bloodlust, either by subbing out the Shigaru pieces or even augmenting them such that the skill gets removed. Now back to the action. After about 5 minutes that felt like 5 hours, we get our first part break, and the results on my health are immediate. I was actually surprised by how effective the healing was. I guess stacking Blood Right with recovery up proved to be quite strong. Oh, how the turns have tabled. But this fight is far from over, as this isn't even Valstrax's final form. In case you wanted a tutorial on how to dodge the improved Risen ambush, here you go. Just look down, then look up. The other scary unique Risen move is the wing spin into the Ultra Stab. For this fight exclusively, I have actually slotted a point of guard up into my set so I could do this. I wasn't actually sure that 1 point in guard up would keep me alive through that attack, but what I really wasn't expecting was being able to instantly heal to full with my counter attack. I'm definitely gonna keep that strat in my pocket for later. Now our health is looking pretty scary again, but I figured I could keep pressing due to my healing. Thankfully, I was rewarded. So with my power of regen, I should have had this fight in the bag, but once Valstrax entered Risen state again, I think I started letting it get in my head. I ended up taking some big hits and got pretty scared. Like, I actually may have spent a good 2 minutes running and healing during this time, which is ironic because had I been a bit more aggressive, I probably would have realized that my target was on its last legs. When the blue skull popped up, it actually took me by surprise. You see, I went into this hunt not expecting to win within a reasonable amount of time, so I was prepared for a more drawn-out defensive battle. So once I saw that I was almost done, I realized, oh, I'm strong actually. And so from this point I started going in. Took some hits, but I was confident to keep my offense up and thus keeping the healing going. And thanks to this, we were able to finish strong. So there we have it. With our hunts finished up, it's about time to wrap up this video. To give some overall thoughts on the playstyle, I honestly think this is some of the most fun I have had while playing Sunbreak. While I still really like a more traditional greatsword playstyle, the Surge Slash has made the weapon feel super fresh, and I think if you haven't really given the weapon a good try, this might be just the thing you've been waiting for. Although I designed my builds heavily around taking on the endgame grind, you may just be able to apply the things I've covered to more general play. And I suppose that's gonna do it. I hope you enjoyed. Once again, I was pretty slow getting this video out, but I guess that's nothing new at this point. As of right now, you can probably expect a slight slowdown of content as I finish up my grind in Sunbreak. I do, however, have one more playstyle guide that I definitely want to get out, so hopefully you can expect that sometime in the not too distant future. After that, I will say I have a few ideas, but I don't want to commit to too much at the moment. But don't worry, I do want to keep on making some more videos, so this definitely shouldn't be the last you see of me. And so for now, all I gotta say is thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.